The other day I had a chance to step inside of a Staples, which I haven't done in a very long time, and I forgot that they had an art section completely. A lot of the stuff that was for sale was out of my price range, because, you know, I'm broke. So as I'm walking down the aisle, I pan over and I see the best thing in the world, which is the clearance aisle. Now, even some of the stuff in the clearance aisle is a little hefty for my wallet. That's when I stumbled upon the Cra-Z-Art section, and the supplies a lot of the time for Cra-Z-Art isn't good. But for once, something caught my eye, and it was these swirled colored pencils for only $4. So since I had $4 in my pocket, it came home with me. Now, I don't know if many of you have used Cra-Z-Art in your life, but this is where the brokest of broke go to is Cra-Z-Art art supplies, okay? They call it Cra-Z-Art because it's insane how bad some of these products can be sometimes. I'm not lying to you. But on the bright side is that it is affordable for some people, and honestly, if you try really hard, maybe you can make it work with some of these art supplies. And this is one art supply that I'm willing to give a try. Now, this isn't the first time I've seen a concept like this, where it's colored pencils that are swirled together and have different colors, but it's the first time I'm using it since I was like, I don't know, 7. So I wanted to give it a try as an adult who can kind of draw. So the first one I want to show you guys is this pink and purple swirled one. I think the designs on the outside of the pencil are actually really cute, and I like the colors that the pack come with. I am also, of course, swatching the art supply because you always have to swatch before you go ahead and use, and I'm kind of twisting the pencil around as I swatch so I can get an accurate, I guess, depiction of what the color looks like. The next pencil is this orange, pink, purple, red kind of pencil going on. I didn't know, like, what to call them otherwise. I just called them by their color. So as I swatch, again, I go around and I kind of just put their name there for my own reference, because I kind of would get confused sometimes as to which pencil is which anyway. The next one is this beautiful orange and red one and yellow. It's really pretty. I really like the colors that are much closer together when it comes to these pencils compared to the other ones that are a little farther apart, and you'll see why in a bit too. The next color is this awesome green, blue, yellow one. I didn't think I'd like this one as much as I did, but it honestly is a really pretty gradient that I can get out of this one, and I think it's just because the colors are really complementary next to each other, and it just looks cool, I'm gonna be honest. Lastly, we have this pencil, which just feels like a conglomerate of every single color. It's blue, green, red, purple. It's got, like, literally, I feel like everything in there. And that's a lot on one pencil, I guess you could say so. But it's a really cool color when you put it down like that on the swatch sheet. Finally, once I sat there and swatched all of them, I kind of wanted to take another look at them and think about what I was going to do, especially because I don't know how to work these into an actual piece. So I went back into the swatches and I decided to kind of play around with the pencils a little bit and see how they would look like once I kind of just swirled them around on the paper. I did use the wrong color at one point next to the swatches and tried to erase it. These are kind of hard to erase, especially because there's not a lot of pigment, so I have to press hard in the first place. So keep that in mind, that if you ever do get these kinds of pencils, that they are a little hard to erase and you do have to press down harder because they are of lower quality. Now, to give these pencils the benefit of the doubt, you saw what I did there? I combined 2 words in a sentence that were like 6 words apart. There's something wrong going up in the brain, bro. Anyway, to give these pencils the benefit of the doubt, I am using marker paper, which means that the paper isn't very toothed, and for reference, the more toothed the paper, the better it works for pencils or graphite or charcoal, like those kinds of art supplies. So toothed paper for, I guess, traditional charcoal, lead art supplies, whatever, that's best. Smooth paper like this works best for inking and markers and things along that nature, more of a quote-unquote wet medium. It's not really a wet medium because there's no water involved, but it is wetter than, you know, pencil lead. So maybe in the future, if I try and use these pencils again, I'll use them on paper that is definitely more toothed, so I can get a even better use out of them. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't use them in this sketchbook, because after all, it is a sketchbook and you can sketch on this paper. It's just that art supplies are obviously going to work better in some areas than in others, just because it makes sense. Like, you wouldn't use watercolors on printer paper, because then the printer paper would just disintegrate. It would just straight up get wet and die. The paper would not last. You would want to use watercolor paper, even if it's not the best watercolor paper, but it's still thick enough to handle all that water. You know, that just makes sense for the medium. So maybe just take some things that I say from my experience with a grain of salt. I know they're only $4 pencils, but some people really appreciate their like dollar, like really, really hard. So they don't want to like waste, even if it is the $4, $2, $1 on a certain supply. Just, I guess, take all of that stuff into consideration. Now, let's talk about some of the benefits of these pencils. Number one, they're cheap, right? We've discussed this. You get 5 pencils for $4. That's 80 cents a pencil. That's great. I like that. The second pro is that they come in a lot of different colors, so you have the chance to kind of experiment with your sketches and have fun with it, because they allow that room to like let loose, right? You don't have to do a perfect sketch, and they kind of create this enjoyable space for you to use the art supply without having to feel stressed about it. They're wonderful for sketching. They really are. I don't know about you guys, but I like to sketch a lot, most of the time off of camera, because I feel like nobody really wants to see sketches. They like seeing like final pieces, so I leave the sketches in the sketchbook for myself and my own enjoyment in the future. Another thing I like about the pencils personally is I like how fat they are. I like fatter pencils because they're easier to grip onto and use, especially if you're someone who draws for like a long period of time. The thinner things that you have to grip over time might wear out your wrists quicker, and you might gain wrist pain. So the fatter the art supply in your hand, it's kind of better for like wrist care in the future, you know? I think another thing about these pencils is that they could probably last you a while. If you're somebody who sketches every day, of course, you know, they would last less than somebody who doesn't sketch every day, but I still think because they are a bigger pencil and they are, you know, a little fatter, have a little bit more graphite in the inside, you're able to use them for a longer period of time, so you could definitely get your money's worth out of the use of these just because of the size of the pencil alone. Now, let's talk about some of the cons of these pencils, okay? Number one, their pigment isn't that great. I'm gonna be real, I had to press down pretty hard sometimes just to get the pigment off, but remember, I'm using marker paper, so maybe it would have been different if I used paper that had some tooth to it or was meant for sketching instead, so take that with a grain of salt. So I did have to press harder for it, number one. Number two, they are harder to erase, and that also comes with the fact that I did have to press harder just to use them. So you're gonna have to either sketch really lightly and then decide when to go in, or, you know, just do an exercise where you don't erase at all, or any of the above, because there's a lot of different ways you could kind of play around with that. It's not the end all be all, but if you wanted to make a final piece with these, that would kind of be a little bit harder because of that. Another thing that I didn't even consider until I had to do it was the sharpener. You have to get a sharpener with the fat end on it. I only have the ones with the small end for some odd reason. So I had to find a sharpener that did have the fat end, and because of the fact that these pencils were kind of less pigmented, I had to press down harder, right? Which means that I had to sharpen them more often. So the only way I could really get any use out of it is if I pointed it out with the sharpener and then went back in. So take that into account too, that you would need the sharpener with a fat head, and if you are pressing down more often, you would have to henceforth sharpen more often. So that kind of was like, whatever, but you know, good enough. For the sketches themselves, I just did two, what are they called? Headshots of two random OCs that I just thought of right there. I think they both look gorgeous, number one. Number two, I really feel like these pencils, I had a lot of fun using them because of the fact that I didn't have to think so hard about it and like how they looked. I thought it was just a nice exercise to use them for. But I will say I liked using the pencils that had less colors in them than more. And the reason why is the ones with the less colors, or like 2 to 3 colors, I could have a little bit more control of them, which means that the drawing didn't get too muddy too quickly. when compared to like this drawing right here. I kind of doodled it out just to try out this pencil. The pencil had a lot of different colors on it, right? So when you're drawing with a lot of different colors, things can get very muddy very easily, and I'm somebody who, if I don't have control from the start of the drawing with these kinds of pencils or art supplies, then it's not going to look very good very quickly. So me personally, I would get more use out of the colors that are less in the pencils than more. Of course, with a little practice and getting used to this kind of pencil, I would do much better with it, but off of the gate, I think that a colored pencil like this with too many colors in it is a little bit jaunting for me. Everybody's different though. Maybe it's something that like would go really easy with you, but I'm having a hard time with it, or vice versa. Overall, it doesn't mean that it's a bad art supply, it just means that I'd have to get used to it. And I think that when it comes to something like this that's nice and cheap and accessible, it's not that bad. Some of the Cra-Z-Art supplies, truly, their buns, their booty doo-doo, they suck. But these weren't too bad. I enjoyed using them, and I might actually use them again in the future. I would suggest everybody kind of like sketch around with them and see how they fare with them, if anything, if you ever want to see them and get them in the future. So yeah, thanks for watching, and remember, I love you. Bye!